In Dallas City, a 33-year-old man had been communicating online with a 15-year-old girl through social media and messaging platforms. The girl's father discovered the communications through a monitoring application installed on his daughter's device. After reviewing the messages, he contacted police. The content of the communications raised concerns significant enough that he acted immediately after reviewing them. Officers reportedly told the father there was little action available to them unless the man appeared in person or committed a crime in person. That response left the family without an immediate law enforcement option. The family chose to continue the communications rather than end them. The goal was to maintain the appearance that a planned meeting would go ahead. The person messaging the man from that point was the girl's stepmother, not the teenager. Over the course of continued contact, the man confirmed he would come to the house that night. That confirmation was what prompted the family to move into position, preparing themselves inside the home and near the backyard entrance. That evening, the man entered the backyard through the gate. The family confronted him. He was tackled and restrained on the ground. Video footage documents the confrontation. The recording shows the man on the ground, held in place by family members, in that position until officers arrived at the scene.
Creating an elaborate sting to catch an alleged predator targeting his daughter. Police say the suspect contacting the girl online, then going to her home. The family ready and waiting.
Planned everything with her, and he was ready, and we were too. We set up by the back door. The moment he entered my yard, at that point in time, I had to do what was right for it.
When officers reached the scene, the man reportedly stated he had come only to talk. He was arrested on a charge of unlawful communication using technology. Police confirmed the family would not face charges in connection with the incident. The father stated his decision was straightforward. Once the man entered the property, the father stated the responsibility to act was clear. His child was at risk, the man had crossed onto the property, and the threshold for action had been met. He felt a responsibility to act in protection of his child. Authorities have issued general guidance discouraging members of the public from taking enforcement actions into their own hands. At the same time, they acknowledge that parents frequently act without delay when they believe a child faces immediate risk. Confrontations conducted outside law enforcement involvement carry a documented risk of escalation when emotions are a factor, a general risk applicable to situations of this type. The case generated online discussion. Some participants in that discussion praised the father's actions. Others argued the situation should have been managed exclusively by law enforcement from the point of the father's initial report. The specific detail that generated the most discussion was a reported police response prior to the sting, that officers could not act unless the man arrived in person or committed a crime in person. That response, if accurately attributed, placed the threshold for law enforcement action at the same physical threshold the family ultimately created themselves. Whether the family's decision to conduct the sting was a reasonable response to that reported constraint, or whether it introduced risks that law enforcement involvement would have managed differently, is a question the reported police response does not resolve, and the one the online debate has continued to turn on. Keep watching because this next security footage is insane. In the early hours of December 13th, 2022, before sunrise, a neighbor named Emily Floyd contacted emergency services about a residence in Cherokee County. She reported loud noises she described as resembling fireworks combined with what she characterized as intense arguing. She told dispatchers she suspected those noises might be gunshots. She raised the possibility that Jason Clower was threatening his wife and suggested the situation could involve a hostage scenario. None of those three claims were confirmed at the time of the call. Deputies from the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office responded but were unable to make direct contact with anyone inside the home. No claim Floyd had made was verified for that response. With no confirmed contact and no verified information about what was occurring inside, the investigative decision that followed was to escalate toward a warrant rather than establish the facts on the ground. At approximately 2:15 a.m., Lieutenant Milton Teasdale obtained a search warrant. The warrant stated that Jason may be armed. It also stated that a dangerous situation could be unfolding inside the home. Both claims derived primarily from Emily Floyd's unverified account. The Eastern Banded Cherokee Indian Police Department SWAT team was contacted to assist with the operation. No formal mutual aid agreement existed between the two agencies. Their absence meant the joint operation proceeded without the standard authorization framework that typically governs interagency tactical deployments. By the early morning hours, the residential area surrounding the trailer was was occupied by multiple armed personnel from more than one agency, positioned around a private home in a residential neighborhood. As part of the operation, officers deployed a robotic surveillance device into the home. The robot was equipped with a camera. It was also equipped with a microphone. The device was introduced into Jason's living space by being thrown through an opening, placing it inside the area of the home where Jason and Allie had been asleep. At the time of deployment, Jason and Allie Klauber were asleep inside. They were completely unaware that a tactical operation had been underway outside their home for more than 2 hours. They had no knowledge of the officers assembled around them. At approximately 4:54 a.m., officers used a loudspeaker to order Jason to come outside with his hands raised. Jason opened the door and stepped onto the porch. His interior surveillance camera recorded what followed. The footage shows Jason's hands raised above his head. One hand held a cigarette. The other held the police robot that had been thrown into his home. Allie Klauber was standing in the doorway directly behind him. Her hands were also raised. The footage shows no sudden movements from either of them. It shows no aggressive gestures. It shows no visible resistance from Jason or from Allie. Within seconds of Jason stepping onto the porch, officers opened fire. The window between his emergence at the door and the discharge of weapons was a matter of seconds. Jason was struck multiple times in the chest and arm. He collapsed and stated he had been shot. Allie screamed in response. She demanded to know why officers had fired. While lying injured on the ground, Jason repeatedly stated he did not have a weapon. Officers entered the trailer with weapons drawn and moved through the interior room by room. That clearing operation occupied the critical minutes following the shooting while Jason remained on the ground, injured and awaiting medical response. He was subsequently transported to hospital and survived. The Cherokee County Sheriff's Office released a public statement following the incident. The statement claimed Jason had confronted officers during the encounter. It also claimed he was armed. Jason was charged with communicating threats. He was also charged with resisting officers. Months later, the interior surveillance footage became public. It showed no weapon in Jason's hands, only a cigarette and the police robot. It showed no aggressive movement from either Jason or Allie. As the footage circulated and public scrutiny of the official account increased, prosecutors dropped all charges against Jason in March 2023, a sequence in which the footage becoming public directly preceded the charges being withdrawn. Jason filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. The lawsuit accused officers of excessive force, unlawful entry, and false arrest. It also accused them of deliberately misrepresenting what occurred during the raid, an accusation whose factual basis was subsequently confirmed by DA Ashley Welch's sworn affidavit, which established that investigators had in fact misled both her office and the approving court. In that affidavit, Welch stated that investigators portrayed the situation as a hostage crisis and claimed Jason was armed, with no evidence supporting either characterization. This is a confirmed sworn legal statement entered into the court record. Following the DA's sworn affidavit confirming that investigators had misled the court, a special prosecutor decided not to pursue criminal charges against any of the officers involved. Jason's attorneys later disclosed that body camera footage from the scene showed Jason on the ground bleeding, staring upward at the sky, a documented record of his condition in the immediate aftermath of the shooting before medical response reached him. In February 2024, Jason Klauber reached a settlement of $10 million. The payment was distributed between Cherokee County and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. It was funded through insurance coverage. No agency formally admitted wrongdoing. No officers were disciplined. No officers were removed from their positions. Public reaction to the settlement outcome was documented as intense. Many questioned how a person who appeared to comply with commands could be shot and still see no individual accountability follow. Sworn testimony submitted in March 2025 again confirmed that Jason never posed a threat and that key details were misrepresented during the investigation to justify the raid. A civil trial is scheduled for August 2025 with a potential to reveal additional details about how the operation was authorized and whether institutional failures contributed to the outcome. The central confirmed institutional record in this case is DA Ashley Welch's sworn affidavit. Investigators told her office and the approving magistrate that Jason was armed and that a hostage crisis was underway, and those representations had no evidentiary basis. A search warrant was obtained happened and a full tactical response was authorized on the foundation of those claims. How a sworn warrant was secured and a SWAT deployment initiated based on characterizations that a district attorney later confirmed in sworn testimony were unsupported. And what that sequence establishes about the authorization process is a question the affidavit raises and the scheduled civil trial has not yet answered. But that's nothing compared to this next clip. On June 24, 2018, Robert Testerman attempted to reach his mother by phone and received no answer. Unable to make contact, he drove to her house on Roseland Avenue in Rosedale. When he entered the home, he encountered a bad smell. A shotgun had been left on the kitchen table. He continued moving through the home and found his mother on the kitchen floor. Cindy Berdina Testerman was found dead in the kitchen. She was 61 years old. It was her birthday. He called 911 and stated he believed his mother had been assaulted or murdered.
What's the address of the emergency?
My mother is dead, and I came over to check on her. She is lying on the floor in the kitchen. I believe she was either assaulted or murdered.
Officers who responded treated the home as an active scene. The weapon was present and the perpetrator's location was unknown, requiring a cautious, systematic clearance of each room. Investigators subsequently determined that Cindy had been killed with an edged weapon and had suffered fatal trauma to the upper body.
I think that my fears that had crept into my brain while I was driving over, I didn't expect any of that to be real. Like, hey, I wonder what's happening here. What's the worst that it could be? I never imagined that it could actually be the worst. Right in the middle of the living room, and I called to her, and I was like, Mom? And there was no response. And so I panicked. Like, I turned around, I walked back out to the front porch, and I immediately called 911.
Straight ahead, to the right. I haven't even gone into the kitchen yet.
You said there's a gun in there?
There's a gun. She has 2 shotguns and a handgun. There is a shotgun sitting on her kitchen table. From the distance that I was away from her, it looked like it was right around her neck.
All right. Is there any reason why a shotgun would be out?
I do not know.
Drawers throughout the home had been disturbed. Valuables were missing from the residence. Cindy's 2013 Honda Accord was gone from the garage. Its absence reinforced the initial reading of the scene as a robbery that had turned fatal. At that point, detectives had one confirmed homicide and no established motive. And it was at that moment that Judy's absence emerged as a second unresolved question on the same street. Neighbors mentioned that a woman who lived directly across the street, Judy Elizabeth Slubzak, 66 years old, had not been seen in some time. Their accounts of her whereabouts did not align. Some said she was in rehab, others said they had encountered her recently. As investigators pressed for consistent accounts, the unease in the neighborhood grew. Detectives now faced a confirmed investigative question whether Cindy had been killed for a personal reason or because she had gotten close to something already concealed on the same street.
When's the last time you saw her? Or talked to her?
The last time I talked to her, Wednesday maybe. We traded she sent me a text on Friday that I didn't respond.
Cindy's home surveillance footage showed an unrecognized young white male in his late 20s or early 30s accessing the home on more than one occasion before driving away in the missing vehicle. Robert did not recognize the man from the footage. Cindy's stolen car was subsequently located. It had been sold to another family who stated they purchased it from a man they only knew by a nickname.
Man sold this car to me and my husband. I didn't steal anything. I didn't know the car was stolen. I wouldn't buy no stolen car.
That limitation gave investigators a general direction without providing an identity. The combination of the footage description and the car sale trail pointed detectives toward Ryan Michael McGuire, Judy Slubzak's 32-year-old stepson. Ryan had been staying in Judy's home. Investigators determined he had already killed Judy weeks before Cindy's murder. Prosecutors stated he intentionally caused Judy's overdose in May 2018, approximately 6 to 8 weeks before Cindy was killed. During that entire intervening period, Ryan maintained a concealment of what he had done. He hid Judy's body inside a cedar chest in her home. He continued living in that residence while doing so, telling neighbors she was away in rehab. Across the weeks of that concealment, investigators believe he was selling property from Judy's home to fund a drug habit, a sustained activity throughout the period, not an isolated event. Cindy knew Judy and consistently raised questions about her absence. Ryan had constructed a specific false account that Judy was in rehab, and Cindy's persistent questioning of that account directly threatened to expose the lie he was maintaining. Prosecutors stated that her continued questioning was the reason he killed her. Detectives traced activity on Cindy's stolen credit cards. Robert had reviewed the accounts and found recent purchases. This led police to a motel where Ryan was staying with his girlfriend. The motel room contained financial records belonging to both women. Cindy's checkbook and documents belonging to Judy were recovered from the same location. Jewelry was found in the room. New shoes were present. A knife was recovered. A pair of shoes with blood staining was also found. DNA testing confirmed the blood matched Cindy. The combination of physical evidence, belongings from two victims, a weapon, and DNA-confirmed blood moved Ryan from a person of interest to the confirmed suspect. During interrogation, Ryan asked for a cigarette before he began to speak. Investigators noted he began disclosing information without significant interrogation pressure.
You've been staying at the motel there?
Yeah, I stayed there for a couple of days.
Okay. What about before that?
I've been staying with that lady.
Who's that?
The huge car I had.
Judy.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your relationship to her?
She's like, I don't know, my stepmom or something like that.
Okay. She let you use the car and everything?
Yeah.
All right, nice lady. Where's she at these days?
Yeah, listen. I need a cigarette. I'm not saying nothing else. I'll get a cigarette.
He admitted that Judy was dead. He followed that admission by voluntarily offering to disclose the location of her body.
I'll tell you everything you need to know. She's gone too. She's dead too. Just to let you know, she's dead too. You're going to charge me with that one too. So I'll tell you where she's at as soon as I get a cigarette.
All right, man.
I know I'm here for the one across the street.
What's that?
I'm here for what? Across the street.
Yeah, man.
Investigators described him as disturbingly calm throughout. That calm was consistent with the demeanor he had maintained across the weeks of concealment, during which he had continued interacting normally with neighbors while Judy's body remained in the cedar chest. Detectives went to Judy's home. Her remains were found inside the cedar chest exactly as Ryan had described. In November 2019, Ryan McGuire pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder. On the first count, he admitted to intentionally causing Judy Slabzak's overdose. On the second, he admitted to stabbing Cindy Testerman to death. Prosecutors stated he killed Judy for financial reasons. Her home and belongings provided him with resources he converted for his own use. They stated he killed Cindy because her continued questioning threatened to expose the concealment of Judy's death. On December 12, 2019, Ryan McGuire was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, terms to be served one after the other rather than simultaneously. He is serving that sentence in Maryland. The case was resolved through a guilty plea rather than a trial. The surveillance footage, DNA evidence, and interrogation record were not tested in open court, but were entered as part of the plea record. Ryan lived in Judy's home with her body concealed in a cedar chest for weeks. He told neighbors she was in rehab. He sold her belongings. The concealment held until Cindy began asking questions that, according to prosecutors, threatened to expose it. Whether Cindy's questioning was the only pressure that could have broken the concealment, or whether the accumulation of sold property, inconsistent neighbor accounts, and the passage of time would eventually have produced the same outcome, is what the confirmed record does not resolve. This happened on the evening of January 20th, 2019. Arjun Sood, 29 years old, and his wife Jessica put their son Oliver, 7 months old, to bed in the nursery of their home in Lake Bington, Illinois. Arjun had equipped the property with Nest products over time. The Nest baby monitor in the nursery gave him remote access to view the room from his phone, and the room's thermostat had been configured at 72 degrees. The full installation represented an investment of approximately $4,000. 17 cameras distributed across the interior and the building exterior, 2 smart thermostats, and a security system covering the entire property. Shortly after the baby had been settled for the night, Arjun was in the hallway immediately beyond the nursery door when a sound came from within. a low male voice audible from the camera's built-in speaker, apparently directed at the infant. He went in immediately. No other person was present in the room. He attributed the audio to possible interference from an external electronic source, a known occurrence with certain monitor and speaker configurations, and rather than leave Oliver there while the cause remained unresolved, brought the baby downstairs as a precaution. On the descent, Jessica observed that Oliver was visibly distressed and perspiring through his clothing in a manner inconsistent with the room's temperature setting. She checked the device. The temperature now read 90 degrees. It had been adjusted remotely. Before either parent could determine what had happened, the voice reappeared, this time originating from a Nest camera in the downstairs living area. The voice directed profanity and racial slurs at Arjun and Jessica, demonstrating real-time awareness of their positions and movements by watching them through the feed. When Arjun turned his gaze toward the camera, the voice said, "Why are you looking at me? I see you watching me." Arjun directed questions at the intruder using the camera's two-way audio capability, asking for their identity and attempting to determine their location. The intruder cited that exchange was as follows.
I'm here. Come. I know you're here. Who are you? Who is this? Are you just sitting at your computer there? Into my account? Where are you? Which country?
A short time later, the voice went silent and did not return.
Yeah, who are you? Come on, be a man. Speak up. Nothing? Nothing to say?
The couple shut down the interior camera feeds and contacted both local law enforcement and Nest customer support. Nest, in its stated response, attributed the access to two conditions. Within Arjun's account configuration, he had recycled login credentials previously exposed in a breach on a different platform, and two-factor authentication had not been activated on his account. Nest also confirmed that two-factor authentication was a security feature Arjun had no prior knowledge of. Credential stuffing, the automated use of username and password combinations obtained from breaches on other services, is a documented attack method by which malicious actors test stolen credentials against unrelated platforms, gaining unauthorized access to accounts where users have reused the same login details. The two-factor authentication option had been introduced within the Nest platform in 2017, 2 years before the incident in Lake Bington. It was not communicated prominently to existing account holders at the time of its introduction. Nest did not make activation of the feature mandatory for all accounts until May 2020, a date falling more than a year after these events took place. The Sood family were not the only Nest account holders to encounter unauthorized access during this period. On the identical date, January 20th, 2019, an Orinda, California family had an emergency warning transmitted through their Nest camera without authorization. The message declared that nuclear missiles, 3 of them, were on course toward Los Angeles, Chicago, and Ohio.
On, like the emergency sounds of an Amber Alert, say, and then a man's voice announced that North Korea had launched 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles toward the United States.
The family's young son, treating the announcement as genuine, took cover beneath a rug. Approximately 1 month prior, on December 17, 2018, a family in Houston encountered an unrecognized voice coming from a Nest camera in their infant child's room. The child was 4 months old. The voice announced an intention to kidnap the child and directed the parents to extinguish the bedroom lights.
That camera on and told us, said turn off the light, and then said, "I'm going to kidnap your baby, I'm in your baby's room."
In all of these documented cases, Nest's stated response directed responsibility toward the individual account holders. There was a hardware level limitation documented in relation to certain Nest camera models. A subset were equipped with a small blue indicator light. This light was triggered only when an intruder activated the audio speaker to transmit voice through the device. It was not triggered by passive silent viewing the live camera feed. An unauthorized user who had gained access to the account could observe the video stream from any camera in the system for an indefinite period, and nothing in the device's behavior would indicate to the household that observation was taking place. The breach became apparent to the Sood family solely because the intruder elected to speak. Had the same level of access been used only for passive surveillance, viewing the nursery camera and every other feed in the system without activating the audio speaker, neither Arjun nor Jessica Jessica would have possessed any means to detecting it. No identification of the intruder was ever established. No arrest was made. What do you think about this? Let me know, and let's move on to this next chilling clip. Akija Bani is a TikTok account maintained by a woman named Akina. Since her son Panko was born, the account has served as a running record of his early development. First milestones, ordinary afternoons, small moments she chose to document. The account reflects a consistent practice, a mother building a chronological archive of her child's early years for an audience that has followed along since the beginning. That context matters. Not every moment Akina records ends up posted. The footage from January 29, 2024 was withheld for a period before she made it publicly available. That hesitation, she later indicated, was deliberate. At approximately 2:30 a.m. on that date, Akina woke to something occurring inside her bedroom. Panko was present in the room. He remained asleep and did not respond to whatever had caused Akina to wake. The footage records three distinct events in sequence. First, the bedroom door appears to open and close without a visible person in the doorway. No figure, partial or otherwise, is captured by the camera at the threshold. Second, the home security system can be heard activating on the recording. Security systems of this type operate through motion sensors or contact sensors at designated entry points. An activation without confirmed entry represents a measurable departure from the system's expected behavior. Third, Akina exits the bedroom after the alarm sounds. When she returns a short while later, the footage shows her pausing in the doorway before entering slowly and sitting down, her expression visibly tense. Akina has since attributed that behavioral change to going into shock. The interval between her exit and return belongs primarily to her attributed account. Akina stated that she believed she had seen a silhouette in the doorway, one she described as resembling her husband. No person is visible in the footage at that point. Her husband, according to her account, was not scheduled to return for several more hours. After the alarm activated, she later explained she had assumed he arrived early and gone into another room. She went to check. What she found, no lights on anywhere in the house. The front door was locked. Her husband had not come home. Those are three discrete negative findings, each standing independently. No lights, locked door, confirmed absence. Akina states she has replayed the incident many times since. She has not offered a revised account of what occurred. She has described it as unexplained. The video remains accessible on her page, and she has continued posting everyday content featuring Panko in the time since. The security system activated at the same moment the bedroom door appeared to move, and it activated in a manner consistent with someone having entered the home. The front door was locked when Akina checked. No person was visible in the footage at any point in the sequence. Security security systems are not designed to produce activations without a physical input. If a locked door eliminated conventional entry and the footage eliminated a visible presence, what event supplied the input the system required to trip? The footage originates from a surveillance camera positioned inside a residential building. No location data or identifying information has been attached to the clip. What is known is limited. A young girl lives in the building with her family. At the start of the recording, the girl is visible near a staircase. The area beneath the stairs contains a small, partially shadowed space with a storage-like quality. The girl's attention is directed toward that space repeatedly. She looks toward it multiple times over the course of the footage. From within the darkness beneath the stairs, a hand becomes visible. It extends outward slowly. It remains in frame for a matter of seconds, then withdraws. No additional figure is visible. No explanation for the hand's origin is established in the footage. A short time later, a cat enters the frame and moves toward the girl. Before reaching the space beneath the stairs, the cat stops. It does not continue toward that area. When the girl's parents later reviewed the footage, they observed the hand. According to the parents, what they saw left them affected. No explanation for the footage has been offered in the available record, and no identifying information about the building has been provided. Cats possess documented sensitivity to environmental stimuli outside the range of human perception, including air movement, ultrasonic frequencies, and subtle shifts in air pressure that can produce observable behavioral changes. The cat entered the frame after the hand had disappeared from view. It stopped at the same location where the hand had been visible. If the animal's behavior had a conventional cause, a change in air current, a sound inaudible to the camera, what produced it at that specific position, and what relationship, if any, does that position have to what the footage recorded there moments before? This happened on the night of August 28, 2020. Leslie Palacio, 22 years old, left for Las Vegas with a man her family had known for years. Eric Rangel Ibarra was 25 at the time. He was not a stranger. He was not someone her family would have had reason to question. He was a family friend, someone the Palacios had been acquainted with long enough that no one tracking Leslie's movements that night would have marked Eric's presence as a concern. Their evening began at the Longhorn Casino in East Las Vegas. Surveillance cameras positioned at the entrance recorded their arrival together just before midnight. The footage captured what followed: dinner, drinks, a stretch of time that carried no visible indication of what was to come. The evening proceeded without any observable irregularity. At some point, they left the casino. They moved to other bars and continued drinking as the night pushed into the early morning hours of August 29th. Shortly before sunrise, the two arrived at Eric's home. By then, Leslie was visibly impaired by alcohol. Footage later reviewed by investigators showed Eric helping her out of the truck and guiding her inside the house. She was upright. She was moving. That was the last time surveillance cameras recorded Leslie Palacio alive. Approximately 1 hour after they entered the home, the same camera that had captured their arrival recorded something the footage leading up to it had not anticipated. A body was being dragged out of the house.
Video from the morning of August 29th shows 25-year-old Eric Rangel Ibarra helping 22-year-old Leslie Palacio, seen here alive, get out of his truck and into the house. An hour later, in video we've blurred due to its graphic nature, the same camera catches Rangel Ibarra and another man, who prosecutors believe is his father, 46-year-old Jose Rangel, dragging a lifeless body from the home and into that same truck. Minutes after, the truck drives off, leaving Rangel hosing off the walk.
That single recorded sequence converted what had been categorized as a missing person investigation into a confirmed homicide case. Leslie's family had begun pursuing their own search before investigators had fully assembled the timeline. When Leslie did not return home, her mother and sister attempted to reach her by phone and by text. They did not wait. They went in person to the Rangel Ibarra residence, looking for any information about where Leslie was. According to reporting and court testimony, one of the final messages sent from Leslie's phone indicated indicated she had something she needed to tell her sister. The message ended there. No further context was provided. No follow-up arrived. The trail from her phone went cold. What investigators were able to reconstruct came too late to intercept what had already been set in motion. By the time the timeline was pieced together, Eric and his father had already vacated the residence. They were gone. When detectives entered and searched the home, what they encountered was consistent with an environment that had been deliberately altered. Cleaning supplies were present. Latex gloves had been left behind. Stained clothes were recovered. In Eric's room, dark spots were observed on a mattress. Blood evidence was identified in multiple areas of the residence. A fitted sheet that should have been present was missing. Investigators examined the condition of the scene and concluded that it had been disturbed in a manner consistent with an attempt to eliminate or conceal physical evidence. The sequence, the cleanup materials, the blood distribution, the missing bedding indicated in their assessment that whatever had occurred inside that house, those present had worked to ensure it left as little recoverable trace as possible. Among the most operationally significant details to emerge from witness interviews was an account provided by one of Eric's friends. According to that friend's statement to law enforcement, Eric had reached out using a phone that was not his own and had asked the friend to help him obtain gasoline. Specifically, according to the friend, because Eric did not want to be captured on surveillance cameras. When the friend pressed him for a reason, Eric allegedly admitted the purpose behind the request. He told his friend that he had killed someone and that she was dead in the backseat of his truck. That alleged admission is drawn entirely from the friend's account to police. It has not been corroborated by an independent record. On September 9th, 2020, 11 days after Leslie was last seen alive, her body was found in MYUU Valley near Valley of Fire State Park. The remains had been left off a dirt road, concealed behind brush, in a remote stretch of desert approximately 60 miles northeast of Las Vegas. The location was not a place someone would encounter by accident. Heat and environmental degradation had severely compromised the remains in the time between disposal and discovery. Forensic examination could not establish an exact cause of death. Leslie Palacio had been enrolled in nursing school at the time of her death. She was months from completing her degree. Eric Rangel Ibarra was believed to have crossed into Mexico. Reports of his presence reached investigators across various states within the country, but none of those reports produced a confirmed location or a sufficient basis for an apprehension. He remained at large. His father, Jose Rangel, surfaced first. In January 2021, he presented himself at the U.S.-Mexico border and surrendered to authorities. Jose admitted his role in moving Leslie's body. He entered a guilty plea to charges of destroying evidence and being an accessory to murder. In August 2021, he was sentenced to 2 years in jail. Leslie's family responded publicly, stating that the sentence failed to reflect the gravity of what Jose had participated in.
Time, like there's not a day, that goes by that we don't. Everything reminds us to bring yourself in, because there's no way of hiding out anymore. You can't hide forever, and just pay for what you did, because we're not gonna stop until we get justice.
In July 2024, nearly 4 years after Leslie's remains were recovered, Eric Rangel Ibarra was arrested in Mexico. He remained in Mexican custody for the following year before being extradited to Nevada in August 2025. Upon arrival, he was booked into the Clark County Detention Center on charges of open murder and destroying or concealing evidence. In September 2025, he entered a plea of not guilty. Trial has been scheduled for August 24th, 2026. As of the most recent available reporting, Eric Rangel Ibarra remains in custody without bail. Surveillance footage placed Leslie Palacio inside Eric Rangel Ibarra's home in the early hours of August 29th, 2020. The same camera recorded a body being dragged from that home approximately 1 hour later. That footage documented the interval, the window between her entry into the house and the moment her body was removed from it. What the footage cannot answer, and what forensic examination was unable to resolve, is what occurred inside that house during those 60 minutes. The cause of death remains officially undetermined. The camera established that something happened. The physical evidence established that an attempt was made to obscure it. What specifically took place in the time between Leslie Palacio walking through that door and her body being carried out of it has not been resolved by the forensic record. On April 23, 2020, ADT placed a call to Shauna Dottie. The purpose of that call was to tell her that the technician who had installed the company's pulse system in her home, a property in the DFW metropolitan area, in 2014 had granted himself access to her indoor cameras on the day of installation and never removed it. The installation had taken place 6 years prior. Shauna and her husband Randy had chosen ADT's Pulse product for its indoor camera capability, motion alerts, and app-based remote access from a mobile phone. When the assigned technician arrived, he mounted a wide-angle camera position to take in the main floor, the family room, the entryway, and dining area, as well as the staircase. The lens extended into the master bedroom and gave a view into a portion of the bathroom. Before he left, the technician told Shauna he needed to attach his personal email address to the account briefly. The stated reason being to confirm the connection was active prior to his departure. For the following 6 years, the system functioned as expected. Neither Shauna nor Randy had any cause to revisit that afternoon. The April 23rd call provided that cause. An ADT representative told Shauna that the technician had added his own email to her account at installation and had continued pulling footage from within the home throughout the entire intervening period. Shauna asked what he had been viewing. According to ADT, they were unable to confirm the total number of times he had logged in or document the specific content of those sessions.
7 hours is a long time, but we're talking 7 years. You don't know what to think. So you find yourself just trying to go back like, okay, what were we doing during this time?
The Dotties were not the only family receiving that call. They were among more than 200. Weeks earlier, a separate ADT customer in the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area had been auditing their poll system settings and noticed an email address on the account that no household member recognized. They reported it to ADT. The company determined that the same address was linked to 220 individual customer accounts across the metro area. Each of those 220 accounts traced back to work performed by the same technician. The explanation for how this was possible resided within ADT's own system design. ADT's Pulse platform permitted technicians to attach a personal email address temporarily to a customer account during an installation appointment. The designated function was diagnostic. It allowed the technician to verify the camera feed was operational before leaving the customer's zone. Once verification was complete, the expectation was that the email address would be removed. In this case, the technician left his address on every account he worked on. The Pulse application loaded on his device continued to register him as a co-owner of each of those properties. ADT had no automated process in place capable of detecting a single email address distributed across 220 separate customer accounts. The company had no mechanism to identify or flag that pattern, and no notification was issued to any of the 220 households. Court records document specific instances of what the access produced. In April 2016, the technician installed the system for a household, a couple with 2 minor daughters whose camera covered the living room and kitchen. Court records show he logged into that account 322 times. For another household, in which 5 minors resided, court records indicate 361 logins. In September 2017, the Prey household's Pulse system was installed by the same technician. On the installation day, Alexia Prey, a teenage daughter in the household, expressed discomfort with the indoor camera setup and communicated that directly. The technician told the family the system was safe. ADT's subsequent findings indicated he had accessed that family's live camera feed close to 100 times across the years Alexia was a teenager. Court filings documented that the camera's position and field of view allowed him to observe her undressed, preparing for bed, and during instances of physical intimacy. The technician was identified as Tylis Forovialis, age 35. He was married with 5 children. He had accumulated 17 years of service at ADT and by 2020 held a senior supervisor position in the DFW Regional Division. In the course of the federal proceedings, Vialis admitted to selecting households where he identified women as attractive and targeting homes belonging to young women and married couples with daughters. According to his own admissions in the federal case, his practice was open to the Pulse application stored on his device, review the catalog of accounts linked to his email address, and access live camera feeds during private moments. On May 18, 2020, Shauna Dottie and Alexia Prey each filed federal lawsuits against ADT, alleging the company had allowed Vialis to exploit the Pulse platform and observe customers through cameras they had installed for their own protection. Lawsuits from additional affected households followed. In January 2021, Vialis entered a guilty plea on computer fraud charges. His sentence, imposed in June 2021, was 52 months in federal prison. In the months before the plea was entered, ADT had terminated Vialis' access to all 220 accounts. The federal plea agreement pertained to a 4.5-year period. Prosecutors working through that period identified an excess of 9,600 unauthorized access events across approximately 200 accounts. The access logs established the frequency and volume of those connections, but they did not establish and what the evidentiary record does not contain is the specific content viewed during each session. In the cases involving documented households, the court record shows what the camera position allowed him to observe. What the record does not contain is the content of the thousands of other logins across the other homes, across the other years. The question the confirmed total places on the record is not whether access occurred. The login volume confirms that it did, across roughly 200 households, over more than 4 years. The question is whether documented incidents in specific homes, taken together with a total exceeding 9,600 access events, established about what was seen in aggregate, and whether the gap between confirmed access and confirmed content is itself the most complete accounting those 200 households will ever receive. On July 22, 2018, Luis Felipe Manveler and his wife Tatiana Spitzner returned to the Golden Garden building in Guarapuava, Paraná, Brazil after spending the evening with friends. The Golden Garden building was their shared residence. The occasion was Luis Felipe's birthday. He held a position as a biology lecturer at a university. Tatiana was 29 years old and was employed as a lawyer. The couple had been married a little over 5 years at the time of these events. Prior to the night of July 22nd, reporting and court testimony characterized the relationship as one defined by patterns of control, humiliation, jealousy, and escalating violence. Friends later stated that this described not an isolated incident, but a sustained pattern within the marriage. Friends of Tatiana stated in testimony that she had expressed a desire to divorce Luis Felipe and had communicated to them that she was afraid of him. Those statements were attributed to friends and witnesses. When the couple returned to the Golden Garden building that night, surveillance cameras in the parking garage and the elevator began recording. Footage from the garage showed Luis Felipe initiating a physical assault on Tatiana before both individuals had fully exited the vehicle. The assault continued in the garage as she attempted to move away from him. She moved toward the elevator in what appeared to be an effort to create distance from him or reach another part of the building. He followed and forced his way inside the elevator with her. Once inside the elevator car, she was thrown against the walls. When she attempted to exit, she was pulled back. She was overpowered on multiple occasions while the camera recorded the sequence without interruption. Interior cameras did not capture what occurred after the couple entered the apartment. According to prosecutors and forensic findings, Tatiana was strangled inside the apartment and was already dead before her body was taken over the balcony. The autopsy documented injuries consistent with asphyxia. It recorded visible marks on her neck. It identified a fractured hyoid bone. Investigators concluded that the fall from the balcony was staged to simulate a suicide. That conclusion was supported by the absence of physiological responses that would originally be observed in a conscious person during a fatal fall. Exterior cameras recorded Tatiana's body landing on the pavement below the building. Luis Felipe was then captured on camera exiting the building and approaching the location where her body had come to rest on the sidewalk. He retrieved the body from the pavement and carried it back into the building. Footage subsequently recorded him transporting the body in the elevator. He was later captured on camera returning to the elevator area carrying a cloth which he used to wipe what appeared to be blood from surfaces in that space. As investigators reconstructed the timeline, witness accounts furnished additional detail regarding the character of the relationship. Witnesses stated that Luis Felipe was controlling, that he directed insults at Tatiana, and that he exercised authority over her clothing choices, her financial access, and household decisions. The witnesses described a dynamic in which Tatiana had diminishing autonomy over the course of the relationship. Some witnesses stated that he worked to humiliate her and to sever her from social connections outside the relationship. Those statements were attributed to witnesses in the course of the investigation and trial proceedings. Luis Felipe was arrested shortly after the crime. In his own statements, he admitted to having assaulted Tatiana on the night in question. The position maintained by his defense throughout the proceedings was that Tatiana had gone over the balcony voluntarily, that she had jumped. The prosecution used the forensic record, the surveillance footage, and the accumulated body of witness testimony regarding the prior pattern of the relationship to contest that account. In May 2021, following a trial that drew substantial public attention across Brazil, Luis Felipe was convicted of qualified homicide. The aggravating factors applied to the conviction were femicide, cruel means, and futile motive. He was also convicted of procedural fraud in connection with his alteration at the crime scene. The sentence imposed totaled 31 years, 9 months, and 18 18 days in prison. A fine was also imposed, along with civil damages payable to Tatiana's parents. His defense challenged the conviction. That challenge was rejected and the conviction was upheld. In June 2025, the final appeal against the sentence was rejected, leaving the original punishment in effect. In January 2026, a court blocked Luis Felipe from inheriting any portion of Tatiana's estate, citing his criminal conviction in connection with her death. The case generated documented consequences at both the state and national level. In 2019, the state of Parana formally designated July 22nd as a state date to combat femicide. Tatiana's sister contributed to a broader public awareness effort connected to the case. The proceedings and their outcome produced sustained discussion across Brazil regarding femicide, patterns of intimate partner violence, and the institutional mechanisms for responding to reported abuse. The case became a reference point in the national discourse and an ongoing examination of legal protections for women in abusive relationships. The post-fall sequence documented on camera includes one specific action the defense has not reconciled with its own stated position. The defense maintained that Tatiana jumped. Under that account, Luis Felipe witnessed a suicide, and yet after retrieving her body from the pavement and returning to the building, he went back to the elevator area with a cloth and cleaned what appeared to be blood from the surface. That is a targeted act directed at physical evidence in a location the camera had already recorded. What that action establishes, in the immediate aftermath, before any formal investigation had begun, is an awareness of what the footage documented in a decision to address it directly. The question the footage forces is not whether the cleaning occurred. The record confirms it did. The question is what it tells us about the intent and awareness of a man who, at the same moment, maintained that he had no part in producing the outcome he was attempting to remove from the scene. Seeing this was so genuinely disturbing, just like this next clip. On September 30th, 2017, Rana Hamer returned to her home in Bremen, a town in the eastern Netherlands. Having just picked up groceries, her household consisted of herself and her dog. In the preceding weeks, she had acquired a Maxter Act 1 security camera from a nearby discount retailer for approximately 35 euros. The device consisted of white plastic housing fitted over a motorized base capable of rotating across the room. She positioned the camera on a living room shelf to allow remote monitoring of her dog via her phone while away from the property. The unit also incorporated a built-in speaker that enabled her to communicate with the dog during her absence. While unpacking in the kitchen that evening, she heard a low mechanical voice coming from the direction of the living room. She entered and found the camera unit in motion, its base actively rotating. Her phone, the only device through which she operated the camera, was in the adjacent room on her bed. She attributed the movement to a software update or minor technical glitch and returned to the kitchen. Within a few minutes, the camera moved again and oriented itself directly toward her. A voice came through the speaker. "Bonjour, madame." Rana called out, asking who was there. No answer came. She moved to one side of the room and observed the camera tracked her position. The voice transmitted again. "Hello, madam. Is everything all right?" She crossed the room and removed the camera from its power source. Later that evening, a friend arrived. Rana recounted what had occurred and the two agreed to run a test. They reconnected the camera to power. In under a minute, the base rotated and the device located Rana in the room. She captured this second incident on her phone and posted it to Facebook.
What did you do?
It's not.
No! Get the out of my house now! Shut the up! Shut the up of my house now! Go away!
Hola, señorita.
Yeah, you.
The footage spread rapidly. Within days, national news coverage in the Netherlands had followed. When a technology journalist investigated the case in the days after the footage circulated, the technical explanation that emerged rested on two features built into every unit from the same manufacturer. First, each device shipped with an identical default password, 1123. Second, each unit had a sticker on its base displaying the device ID. Using only those two data points in the manufacturer's free application, any individual could gain access to cameras in that product line, including the ability to view the live video feed, monitor audio through the built-in microphone, and transmit speech back through the speaker. The device's manual noted that the default password was weak and recommended changing it before first use. The application itself, the interface users navigated during initial setup contained no prompt directing users to change the default credential. The system placed no obstacle between a new user and a misconfigured device. Rana had not changed the password. According to the journalist's findings, she had no means of knowing she needed to. This class of IoT device represents a documented vulnerability pattern in consumer electronics. When manufacturers ship products with universal default credentials, the security burden transfers effectively to the end user without adequate instruction at the point of setup to ensure that transfer is completed. To verify the scope of vulnerability, the technology journalist used only the device manual and the manufacturer's free application to gain access to 4 additional households operating cameras from the same product line. The process took minutes. None of those 4 households had received any indication their camera feeds were being viewed. Fiona Nigel is a Canadian fashion model. She had an established modeling career with the Berlin Film Festival among her runway appearances in the mid-2000s. In her late 30s, a long-term relationship developed with a partner based in the United States. In her own words, she described him as quietly controlling. According to her account, his contact extended beyond routine communication. He would call her on FaceTime and ask to say hello to whoever was with her at the time. She took this to be attentiveness. She made the decision to move into his property in the United States. The property was equipped with a comprehensive integrated smart home system. Its coverage included lighting, heating, window blinds, security cameras, and a sound system that extended throughout the building. All components in the system operated via a platform her partner had configured and controlled. The login credentials for that platform were held exclusively by him. The first documented incident took place in late 2010. Theo woke during the night to the sound system playing heavy metal music at maximum volume through every speaker in the home. She was unable to reduce the volume. The system did not respond to her inputs. The audio stopped abruptly.
In the middle of the night, and all of a sudden, over the sound system, comes this blaring music that startles you awake. That's what would happen to me.
In the weeks that followed, lights she had turned off for the night would come back on, at times flickering intermittently before their illumination settled. Television sets in the home would activate without the input and power down as she moved toward them. The events accumulated without any technical explanation she could identify. In an interview with CBC's Marketplace, she said it's almost as if the house is haunted. Her partner subsequently relocated to a different city while Phil remained in his home. His credentials continued to govern every device in the property. Messages began arriving from him that referenced details he had no direct means of knowing, the clothing she had worn, and the identity of whoever was with her when she came home. The specificity of those details indicated live observation rather than any other source of information. He had been using the smart home system to monitor her movements and to demonstrate his awareness of them. According to her account, he issued direct threats to her on multiple occasions.
I need you to stop manipulating the lights.
I'm not touching the lights.
What is wrong? Just can you please leave me alone? You're not supposed to call me. I'm not bothering you.
I am going after the dogs. And then I'm going after you.
Able to monitor me, using our security surveillance cameras, even remotely, from thousands of miles away.
Theo attempted to disable the smart home system. She did not hold the login credentials and could not do so. Lacking any direct means to shut it down through her own authority, she had no technical mechanism to interrupt the ongoing access. She contacted local police and described the situation in full. Police informed her that because the property was not registered in her name, there was nothing they could do. She departed the home and moved to a nearby women's shelter with her dogs. The credential configuration of the smart home system assigned full administrative control to a single account holder, Theo's partner. From the time she moved into the property through the entire period during which the documented incidents occurred, she held no login credentials, no override access, and no technical authority over any connected device within the home she occupied. When she sought intervention from law enforcement, the legal determination rested on the property title rather than the conditions she had documented inside it. Police informed her that the home's registration established the boundary of their jurisdiction. The system's login architecture meant one party retained unilateral authority over every environmental function in the home: the sound, the lighting, the camera feeds, the heating, and the record of who entered and when. The legal framework applied to the same property addressed the title, not the technical conditions documented within it. The question the confirmed record places before the viewer is this: in a home where administrative access to all systems resided with one person and the property title rested with that same person, what effective authority did the occupant who held neither actually possess. The footage originates from a fixed CCTV installation covering a public space. Individuals move through the area in the ordinary course of the recording. Nothing in the preceding frames indicates what is about to occur. A man drops from above and strikes on an occupied bench. There is no lead-up visible within the frame. The impact registers as severe, the kind of force that under normal circumstances would be expected to produce significant physical consequence. Searching online for information about the overhead environment at this location, I found no clear evidence of a rooftop, balcony, or adjacent structure positioned above the bench that could account for the trajectory. That is my own finding from available online sources, not a confirmed architectural record of the site. Fixed CCTV installations record only what falls within a stationary field of view. Overhead structures and lateral architecture can exist immediately adjacent to the recorded area without appearing in the footage, meaning the origin point of a falling person may be absent from the frame even when the fall itself is captured. Two competing interpretations have emerged among viewers of the clip. The first holds that the man descended from a structure positioned outside the camera's field of view. The second is that the footage presents no identifiable point of origin at all, that he appears without a traceable source. Both readings are viewer attributions, not confirmed conclusions. No visible reaction from individuals in the surrounding area is shown in the footage following the impact. What the recording does document is this. Seconds after an impact, the footage presents as violent. The man sits upright, rises from the bench, brushes off his clothing, and walks away. The question the footage places on the record is not where he came from. It is what the documented absence of any visible injury or physical distress in the immediate seconds following that level of impact is consistent with. On August 8, 2025, Brenda, identified only by first name, removed her Ring doorbell camera from its exterior mount and brought it indoors to charge the battery. The removal was part of a routine she followed every few weeks. On this occasion, once the device was inside, she noticed that the blue indicator light on the camera was active. A Ring doorbell's blue indicator light activates under 3 conditions: active streaming, active recording, or an ongoing live two-way call with someone signed in to the associated account. None of those conditions should have applied to an unmounted device inside the home. Brenda then heard a voice transmitting through the camera speaker in real time. The person speaking could be heard laughing, indicating deliberate, conscious engagement rather than an accidental connection. She recorded part of the interaction on her phone. Within a short time, the audio from the speaker ceased and the indicator light went dark. She subsequently posted the footage to her TikTok account.
It's you. I see you.
The post generated a substantial volume of comments. Some expressed surprise at how accessible a Ring device's feed could apparently be to an unauthorized party. Others described parallel experiences of their own. One comment read, "I have cameras all over my house and I have one in my bedroom. And a few days after I got them, I was sleeping and got woken up by someone snoring through my camera. And it wasn't no one in my house, because I didn't log in to anyone else's phone yet because I just set them up." Among the comment section, a separate theory emerged. Multiple commenters proposed that what Brenda heard was not the result of unauthorized access at all, but interference from a nearby baby monitor crossing into her doorbell signal. The voice, some noted, was consistent in tone with a parent speaking to an infant. The theory drew on a documented phenomenon. Analog baby monitors are known to capture audio from neighboring devices that share similar radio frequencies, causing unintended cross-signal transmission. This interpretation was offered by commenters, not by Brenda. The technical record, however, does not support that explanation when applied to a Ring device. Ring doorbells are not analog systems. They function by linking to a home Wi-Fi network, with all audio and video routed through Ring's encrypted servers. Under that architecture, any audio transmitted through a Ring doorbell speaker must come from someone actively authenticated into the account through the Ring application. The analog interference mechanism, signal bleed between radio frequency devices, is not applicable to Ring's infrastructure. For a voice to have come through Brenda's speaker in the manner she documented, an individual would have needed active app access and account credentials when the transmission occurred. Credential compromise. through reused passwords, exposed in prior data breaches, or through phishing, is a documented pathway by which unauthorized parties gain access to smart home device accounts without being physically present at the location. Ring's architecture establishes a single condition for any audio to reach the doorbell speaker: active account access through the app. The blue light activates only when the camera is streaming, recording, or connected in a live call to a logged-in account. Both indicators were simultaneously present when Brenda brought the device indoors. The light was on, and a voice was audible. The question the documented record places before the viewer is this: given that both the illuminated indicator and the transmitted voice map to the same confirmed technical requirement, active account access through the Ring application, what does their simultaneous occurrence at that moment establish about the state of the account? Two sisters were alone in a residential property when the house alarm activated. Both were in the same room at the time. One of them can be heard in the recording saying she was documenting what was happening.
Recording up, recording. Wait. Do you hear that?
The security cameras show the front door in an open position. Neither sister had observed the door open. They registered it as already open when the footage was reviewed. When they reviewed the recording to identify that moment, no person is visible at the threshold. The door moves without a visible person present to cause it. A police siren was audible outside during this period.
Oh, what is it? Clear. Clear.
Shortly after, a small dark figure is visible in the footage. It moves rapidly past the camera and exits the frame. No defined features are visible on the figure. The sequence is brief.
That it just moved so quickly. Yeah. But then like the motion capture camera didn't see that shape. And like when it was
The behavior of the camera's object detection system across the sequence is inconsistent. At certain movements, when the figure passes a lens, no tracking box is produced. The system generated no marker around the subject. At other moments in the same sequence, a green detection box appears within a darkened part of the room, indicating the system registered and marked something. This detection pattern had not been observed with this camera prior to this event.
opening on its own, that closed, we closed that door.
And I mean, this house is like brand new, like it's not old or like
yeah.
Motion-triggered and object detection security cameras typically generate tracking markers based on pixel change, heat signature, or shape recognition, meaning the absence of a tracking marker where movement is visible in the footage represents a departure from the system's expected operational behavior. Both sisters initially concluded that a person had entered through the front door. Following their review of the footage and their observation of the figure, they revised that position. According to their account, they no longer believe the event involved a human intruder. They have stated a belief that whatever entered did so through the open front door. The camera's detection response across the sequence documented two distinct states: a green tracking box registering in a dark, empty appearing room, and no tracking box present during the moments the figure was in motion across the frame. With those two states, one generating a marker, one not, establish about what the system was and was not registering at different moments in the same event is a question the footage places on the record. Jennifer Cassie was 24 years old. She had returned from a trip to the Virgin Islands with her boyfriend Rob Allen on January 22, 2006, 2 days before she vanished. Her residence was in Orlando, Florida at a complex known as Mosaic at Millennia. On January 24, 2006, she disappeared. Her daily routine before leaving for work involved contacting Rob Allen, text or call without exception. Rob would later describe that daily contact as functioning with the regularity of an alarm clock. On the morning of January 24th, his phone received nothing. He called her repeatedly between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. Each attempt went to voicemail. By mid-morning, Jennifer's employer reached her parents. She had not arrived at work. She had recently been promoted, and her absence was entirely out of character. Her parents reached the building manager and requested a welfare check. The apartment door was secured from outside. The building manager used a spare key to enter. Inside, there was no indication of forced entry and no clear evidence of a struggle. Her car was absent from its designated parking space. Her purse, phone, and keys were gone. The Mosaic was still under construction. Construction workers moved through the complex without restriction. Some were reportedly living in vacant units. A private investigator retained by the family reported that at least 10 men were occupying the unit situated directly opposite Jennifer's. Multiple individuals recalled her disclosing that some workers had made inappropriate comments to her and to other women in the building. Management had allegedly responded that they had limited capacity to address the situation. 2 days after Jennifer's disappearance, police found her black 2004 Chevy Malibu at the Huntington on the Green, a condominium complex approximately 1 mile from the Mosaic. A resident had identified it from news coverage. Surveillance footage at that location showed the vehicle arriving at approximately 1 p.m. on January 24th. The driver was visibly not Jennifer. The driver remained in the vehicle for approximately 30 seconds. A window investigators believe was used to wipe down surfaces. The individual then exited the vehicle and proceeded past a line of fence posts. The camera captured still images at 2 to 3 second intervals, and in each frame, a fence post obscured the person's face. Search dogs subsequently picked up a scent at the abandoned vehicle and traced it toward the Mosaic. Witnesses reported Jennifer's car swerving as it left the parking lot that morning, as though a person inside was losing control of the vehicle, according to witness accounts. Forensic analysis recovered no blood and no definitive DNA. An unusual pattern was identified in the vehicle's hood, in the dust coating it, described as possibly consistent with pressure or movement during a struggle. A witness identified the figure in the surveillance footage as Chino, a maintenance worker who had previously serviced Jennifer's unit. Investigators questioned him while he was in custody on unregulated charges. He denied any involvement, submitted to a polygraph, and passed it. He maintained his innocence. Chino's documented height was 5'9". Investigators noted the figure in the footage appeared shorter. In 2018, Jennifer's parents filed a civil lawsuit against Orlando's police department. Through those proceedings, they secured access to over 16,000 pages of case documentation. Among those documents was a witness report that had not been previously pursued to resolution, stating that someone had been seen disposing of a 6 to 8 foot rolled carpet in a lake position near the mosaic shortly after Jennifer disappeared. On that same day, workers in the adjacent unit had been laying carpet. In November 2019, a dive team conducted a search of the lake. Nothing was recovered. Jennifer was declared legally dead by a judge in 2016. Her father, present in court that day, called it the most difficult experience of his life. The investigation remains open. No arrests have been made and no confirmed suspect has been identified. The witness account placed in investigative records was not previously pursued to resolution. The carpet installation in the unit across from Jennifer's occurred on the day she disappeared. The 2019 dive of the lake returned a negative result. A negative result confirms that the search produced no findings. It does not confirm that the account has been resolved. The question the confirmed record places on the investigation is whether the methods and scope of the 2019 search were sufficient to determine that the witness account pointed to the wrong location, the wrong time, or no evidence at all. A woman named Tammy was returning home from work late one night. She had just exited her vehicle when something on the opposite side of the street drew her attention. According to her account, she first noticed a faint glow close to the ground. Looking more carefully, she observed a dark figure moving on all fours. The figure then rose to an upright position and moved along the sidewalk. She described its frame contorting and extending until it no longer appeared recognizably human. It then dropped back to all fours and vanished into the darkness. Tammy has stated that she froze in place. Today, she has provided no explanation for the experience. According to her own account, it did not register to her as a normal creature of any kind. This account is a single witness verbal report with no supporting footage and no corroborating observation, meaning its details are necessarily limited to what Tammy described. The movement sequence Tammy reported includes an upright phase. The figure transitioned from crawling to walking on two limbs before returning to all fours. The question that sequence places on the record is what a figure's capacity for voluntary upright locomotion, followed by a return to all fours, establishes or fails to establish about whether the entity was human. The footage originates from a controlled workspace. Surfaces are clean and even. Glass jars are arranged on a table. Nothing about the initial frame suggests anything out of the ordinary. A male employee is present in the room, engaged with a task that occupies his attention away from the table. He is not facing the jars. His position in the room places him at a distance from the table, a distance that, according to the footage record, would have made it physically impossible for him to reach the table in time to have caused what followed. One of the jars falls. The The movement is not gradual, it's a single direct motion, floor-bound, with no observable lateral travel across the surface prior to the drop. The jar strikes the floor and shatters. The employee turns toward the sound. He glances between the shattered glass and the table. He leaves the room and reports the event to others. His account, as attributed, does not connect the incident to any action of his own. A second male employee enters the room to address the breakage. For a brief interval, the room is undisturbed. Then a second jar begins to move. This event does not share the characteristics of the first. Rather than a fall, this movement is a slow, steady slide along the table's surface in the direction of the edge. No visible contact precedes it. No visible mechanism is apparent in the footage. The second employee observes the movement. He pauses. He approaches the table, examines the jar briefly, and repositions it. He does not leave the room immediately. He remains in proximity to the object for a period following the repositioning. The room eventually returns to an undisturbed state. Air pressure differentials, surface vibration from HVAC systems, and minor structural unevenness are each documented causes of object displacement in controlled workspaces, with each mechanism producing different movement signatures, sudden fall versus gradual slide, that can sometimes be distinguished through examination of the footage. Proximity analysis in surveillance footage establishing the distance between a person and a moving object at the moment of displacement is a standard investigative step used to assess whether human contact was a possible contributor to the observed movement. These explanations have been proposed by viewers and investigators reviewing the footage. They represent documented physical causes that are capable of producing object displacement under certain conditions. However, none of them has been established as applicable to both events, and no single proposed cause resolves both incidents conclusively. The conditions under which the two events occurred were not identical. The first jar fell while the employee was positioned too far away to have made contact. The second jar moved while the employee was close enough to observe the displacement clearly, close enough to watch it happen and to respond directly, but according to the footage record, not close enough to have produced the movement himself. The two events produced the same category of outcome, an attributed object displacement under different proximity conditions. In the first, no proximity to the object existed. In the second, the observer was present, close, and watching. The proposed explanations each carry different implications depending on which event is being considered. A surface irregularity or vibration might account for one movement type, but not the other. Air pressure shifts might explain a gradual slide, but present difficulties when applied to a single abrupt fall. The question the footage places on the record is this: given that the two events produce the same outcome, an attributed movement under demonstrably different conditions of proximity and observation, does the consistency of that outcome across both conditions strengthen any of the proposed physical explanations, or does it complicate them? In August 2025, CCTV footage from a motorcycle dealership showroom in Thailand recorded the following sequence. The footage shows the front door opening. No person is visible entering through it. A female employee at the counter stood and began speaking calmly, as though addressing someone who had just entered. The camera recorded no one in the area she was addressing. Co-workers then enter the room. The footage shows them attempting to check on her and pull her back. She appeared confused, oriented toward a point near the door. She collapsed. After the incident, the employee stated that the man had entered the premises and was inquiring about a motorcycle. According to her, he appeared entirely normal. When her co-workers approached, she stated the man was no longer present. A review of the footage confirmed no person is visible in the recording. A discrepancy between observed human behavior and what a camera simultaneously records, where behavior implies a stimulus the footage does not show, is a documented category of anomalous surveillance event. The footage simultaneously records two things: the employee's sustained behavioral response, standing, speaking, remaining oriented toward a specific area, and no visible person in that area. The question this discrepancy places on the record is what the employee's documented response to an unoccupied area establishes about what she was responding to. On March 14, 2026, footage emerged from the Palan area of Guatemala showing the aftermath of a multi-vehicle collision. Information circulating alongside the footage attributes the crash to a truck that reportedly lost its brakes. According to that same circulating information, 7 vehicles were involved. The same sourcing reports 4 fatalities and states that several additional people sustained injuries. An 11-month-old girl was reportedly transported to Skintla National Hospital, according to those same unverified accounts. These details cannot be confirmed through official or mainstream reporting, and that caveat applies to every figure cited above. The numbers and circumstances described reflect what accompanied the footage as it circulated, not what has been independently established by verified sources. Road incident footage frequently circulates on social media platforms well ahead of any formal reporting, particularly in regions where press infrastructure is limited, and the casualty figures that accompany early footage, in those cases, often remain unverified for an extended period of time. A man in Astoria, Oregon stated that his home had been the site of ongoing activity he described as poltergeist behavior, attributed to his own account. According to him, the pattern included objects shifting from their positions, doors behaving inconsistently, and a persistent sense that some unseen presence occupied the space. In response, he installed a CCTV camera in his bedroom to document any further events. For a period following installation, the camera recorded nothing out of the ordinary. That changed during a recording captured while the man was asleep. The door to the bedroom closed with an abrupt, forceful impact, sufficient to visibly shake the camera mounted in the room. The sound woke him. He became disoriented and began calling out into the unlit room. A review of the footage showed no visible figure at the door and no shadow visible at the threshold at the moment of movement. No visible cause for the door's motion appears in the recording. He continued to shout in the direction of an unidentified source. He then left the room. The footage ends with the door closed and the room visually undisturbed. Viewers who reviewed the footage offered several proposed explanations. Some attributed the event to air pressure differentials common in older homes, air drafts, or compromised door hardware, each of which is capable of producing door movement under certain conditions. Others in the viewer commentary question whether those mechanisms would account for the visible force evidenced by the camera shake. Pressure differentials between adjacent rooms, particularly in older or poorly sealed residential construction, can generate sufficient force to move or slam doors, with the speed and force of the movement determined by the degree of pressure imbalance. The man has stated his belief that something deliberately interacted with him during the recorded event. This position is attributed to him. The camera shake is a confirmed footage observation, establishing that the door's closure produced measurable physical force sufficient to move a mounted camera. The footage simultaneously confirms the absence of any visible mechanism responsible for that force. The question the recording places on the record is this: what category of cause is consistent with producing force sufficient to shake a mounted camera while leaving no visible trace in the same frame? The footage shows a bedroom at rest. The lights are off, the door is closed, a woman is asleep in the bed. The initial frame presents nothing anomalous. The door opens, no contact precedes the movement, no visible force is acting on it. The door moves without an identifiable cause in the recording. Residential door movement without visible contact is a documented category of footage anomaly with multiple proposed mechanical causes, including pressure differentials, incomplete latching, and floor or structural vibration, each of which produces a distinct movement pattern that can be assessed against the footage. The woman wakes. The waking is abrupt, not a gradual transition from sleep, but an immediate response as though registering a sudden auditory or environmental change. She's alert as soon as she is awake. Her first movements are immediate and directed. Sounds begin. The footage captures what is described as crashing and banging. The sounds are not continuous and do not follow a regular pattern. They occur without an identifiable source visible in the recording. She reaches for a light source. The light activates, deactivates, and activates again before stabilizing. This flickering is a discrete documented footage event. The light does not behave as expected on first contact. Light flickering in residential settings is typically attributed to loose wiring connections, bulb failure, or power fluctuations, and the presence of flickering concurrent with other anomalous events in the same space is a specific detail viewers typically identify as a distinguishing factor in footage of this type. She rises from the bed. Her movement is purposeful and prompt. She moves from the bedroom into an adjacent room. She activates a light in that space. The light in the adjacent room functions without the flickering behavior documented in the bedroom. For a period, she remains there before returning. She returns to the bedroom. The door is still open from the initial event. She moves to the bed, gets back in, and extinguishes the light. The room is dark again. The sequence from waking through her return to the bed, which includes a door opening with no visible cause, an irregular noise event, and a light that flickered before stabilizing, has now resolved into its original configuration: a dark room, a door ajar, person in bed. Shortly after she extinguishes the light, something draws her attention again. The footage documents this as a second stimulus, described as less intense than the initial crashing and banging. It is sufficient to draw her out of rest. She sits up in bed. She reaches for her phone. She does not lie back down. She remains seated and alert, holding the phone, scanning the room. Her posture and focus indicate sustained attention directed at the surrounding space. The footage ends with her in this position, seated, phone in hand, looking around the room. No visible figure is captured in the footage at any point in the sequence. No visible mechanism is recorded for any of the documented events, not for the door opening, not for the sounds, not for the light flickering, and not for the second stimulus that drew her attention. The woman is not identified. The location is not given. No follow-up information is available regarding what occurred after the recording ends. Viewers reviewing the footage have proposed mechanical explanations. Some propose the door's movement was caused by airflow or a latch that failed to engage. Others focused on the timing of the events relative to the woman's awareness and question whether those explanations account for the complete sequence. The discussion is attributed to viewer commentary. The confirmed sequence includes a specific decision. After the door opened, the sounds occurred and the light flickered. The woman left the room, returned, got back into bed, and extinguished the light. That series of actions indicates she assessed the situation and made a determination to return to her original state. Then a second stimulus occurred. The question that sequence places on the record is whether her decision to return and extinguish the light, a decision that implies the initial events had reached some form of resolution, was accurate, and what the subsequent recurrence establishes about whether the initial events had actually concluded. Street surveillance footage from Galena recorded the following sequence late one night. The streets were largely unoccupied. Illumination came from scattered streetlights positioned at intervals along the pavement. A small figure entered the frame, clothed entirely in white. Long dark hair obscured the figure's face, leaving no features visible. The figure moved along the pavement at a measured, unhurried pace, not accelerating, not pausing, simply advancing in a straight line. As the figure reached a cemetery gate with locked iron bars, it appeared in the footage to move directly through the gate structure without obstruction. No climbing attempt is visible in the recording. No interaction with a latch or handle is captured. No physical resistance between the figure and the bars is apparent in the footage. Frame rate limitations and lighting conditions in street surveillance cameras can produce visual artifacts where a subject appears to pass through or overlap with a structure when the actual transition, climbing, stepping through a gap, or moving around an obstacle occurs between captured frames or outside the camera's field of resolution. Galena carries documented local folklore concerning haunted buildings and spirits connected to the town's historic past, attributed to community knowledge. Local community members responded to the footage quickly. Some view the recording as confirmation of paranormal activity in the area, attributed to community members. Others proposed alternative explanations: camera malfunction, lighting distortion, or post-production editing, attributed to skeptical viewers. The footage shows no climbing attempt, no visible latch interaction, and no indication of physical resistance between the figure and the bars. The question those absences place on the record is what they do and do not establish. A recording that captures none of the observable actions typically associated with passing through a gate does not confirm those actions did not occur. It only confirms that if they occurred, the camera did not capture them. Whether that distinction resolves the footage or leaves it open is what the recording itself does not answer. The footage originates from a fixed camera recording a home tutorial. The subject is presenting an illustration tutorial, walking through techniques for protecting and presenting finished artwork. He describes the function of a cover sheet, how to place it over completed work, and the materials required for the process: a large paper sheet, mounting board, masking tape, and scissors. His delivery is measured and consistent throughout. The camera captures the home interior. Behind the subject, kitchen cabinets line the wall in a row. At the start of the recording, all cabinet doors are closed. Nothing in the initial frame suggests any departure from the expected. The tutorial continues at a steady pace. As the subject explains materials and placement techniques, a cabinet door behind him begins to move. The motion is gradual, a slow opening of the door slight in degree. No hand is visible, no shadow is present, and no direct contact precedes or accompanies the movement. The subject does not notice. He continues speaking, covering the same procedural content, while the cabinet door remains in this partially open position. The cabinet door then slams shut. The impact produces a sharp, abrupt sound that is distinct within the recording. The subject stops speaking immediately. He turns in the direction of the cabinet. The transition from tutorial delivery to attention directed at the cabinet occurs without hesitation. He walks to the cabinet. He opens the door manually and closes it, listening to the sound produced. He repeats the action in a more deliberate, controlled manner, isolating the sound of the door's movement. His post-test observation, captured in the footage, the sound of his manual test matches the sound of the slam he had just heard. This is the subject's own in-footage conclusion from this test. He steps back from the cabinet. He does not resume the tutorial. He makes no attempt to explain what happened within the recording. He ends the recording shortly after. The footage cuts. In his account given after the recording, the subject stated that no other person was present in the home during the recording. According to him, no other party could have accessed the cabinet. He also mentioned having heard small sounds before and frequent bumps and knocking during the night, but described these as easy to dismiss at the time. He described the cabinet event as different from those prior instances because it was both visible and captured in the recording, attributed to his stated account. Cabinet doors with loose hinges, worn latches, or slight frame imbalance can open and close from air pressure changes, foot traffic vibration, or thermal expansion without direct contact, and each of these causes typically produces movement at a speed and force determined by the degree of imbalance rather than an applied force. Loose hinges, air pressure shifts, and cabinet door imbalance are each documented mechanical causes of unprompted movement of this type. None of these has been confirmed as applicable to the specific event documented in this footage. The subject's in-footage test produced a confirmed observation. The sound he generated by operating the cabinet manually matched the sound that preceded his investigation. The question that result places on the record is what the match does and does not establish. A manual test that reproduces a sound confirms that the door is capable of producing that sound under that type of contact. It does not confirm that the original event involved the same type of contact. The match establishes acoustic consistency between the manual closure and the recorded slam. It does not establish that the recorded slam was produced by manual contact. Whether that distinction changes the available interpretations of the footage or leaves them unchanged is what the test itself does not resolve. On August 28, 2003, Brian Wells entered the PNC Bank in Erie, Pennsylvania on Peach Street. He was 46 years old. A metal collar device was locked around his neck. Security cameras recorded the event. During the lunch rush earlier that same day, a call was placed to Mamma Mia's Pizza requesting delivery. The owner had difficulty making out the caller's words and transferred the call to Brian Wells, a soft-spoken, quiet employee. The order was for 2 large pepperoni and sausage pizzas, addressed to Peach Street. Brian left the shop and did not return. Approximately 2 hours later, he appeared in live news broadcasts. The bank footage captured him with a collar bomb secured around his neck. Witnesses described him with a lollipop in his mouth, swinging a shotgun cane. One witness compared the matter to Charlie Chaplin. He demanded $250,000. He left the bank with $8,702. 15 minutes later, police apprehended him at the Eyeglass World parking lot. He was handcuffed and placed on the pavement. The collar was audibly beeping and ticking. A bomb squad was called. Brian told officers that 4 men had attached the collar device to him in proximity to a transmission tower and then handed him written scavenger hunt instructions attributed to statements to police. If all tasks were finished in time, he was told the device would be deactivated. He pleaded for help and stated he was a hostage. 3 minutes before the bomb squad arrived, the device detonated. Brian Wells died immediately. Police found a handwritten note inside his car detailing each task in the scavenger hunt. Investigators determined that completing every task within the permitted time frame was not humanly possible. Attributed to investigators, the bomb had been programmed to detonate after 55 minutes. There was no remote detonator. Marjorie Deal Armstrong eventually emerged as a central figure in the investigation. Her history included a 1980s charge for the murder of her boyfriend Robert Thomas. She had fired 6 rounds into him but was acquitted on self-defense grounds. Her husband Richard Armstrong later died under circumstances described as suspicious, officially ruled a cerebral hemorrhage, allegedly the result of his head striking a coffee table. William Bill Rothstein came forward to police just weeks after Brian's death, reporting a human body stored in his freezer. The deceased was James Roden, Marjorie's boyfriend. According to Rothstein, Marjorie had killed Roden during a dispute and had compensated him $2,000 to assist in concealing the body, attributed to Rothstein's account. While incarcerated, Marjorie admitted to prior knowledge of the collar bomb scheme, attributed to her prison statements. She stated the egg timers in the device had come from her. Bill Rothstein was identified by her as the scheme's architect. Rothstein had died of cancer in 2004. Kenneth Barnes, identified as a co-conspirator, testified that multiple elaborate money-making schemes had been discussed within the group, attributed to Barnes' testimony. Marjorie allegedly proposed murdering her father to obtain inheritance money. When that plan did not proceed, the scheme evolved into a plan for a bank robbery that would not require anyone to physically enter the building. In 2010, Marjorie Deal Armstrong received a federal conviction and a sentence of life plus 30 years. She died in 2017 from breast cancer. Kenneth Barnes died in 2019. Whether Brian Wells participated willingly or was coerced into the robbery remains disputed. What the confirmed investigative findings establish is this: the scavenger hunt tasks were not completable within the 55-minute window, and no remote detonator existed. What those two facts leave open, and what the case record does not resolve, is whether Brian understood either condition when he entered that bank. A security camera in Chile recorded this incident during Independence Day celebrations. A man was behind the wheel while impaired by alcohol, and his vehicle came close to striking a family, a girl, her mother, and her brother. The girl moved clear of the approaching vehicle, and all 3 family members avoided being struck. The girl, her mother, and her brother were unharmed. Security camera footage of vehicle incidents near pedestrians during public celebrations is a documented category of CCTV content, where the density of foot traffic in public spaces increases collision risk for impaired drivers. On the evening of July 13, 2019, surveillance cameras at a gas station in Fort Nelson, British Columbia, recorded the movements of Lucas Fowler and Sheena Dees. At 7:30 p.m., the pair pulled in driving a blue Chevrolet van, a 1986 model. Lucas fueled the vehicle. Sheena cleaned the windows. At 7:37, they embraced. At 7:38, they entered the store. Sheena purchased ice cream. At 7:47, they departed toward Liard River Hot Springs. They did not arrive. Lucas was 23 years old, originally from Sydney, Australia, and had been traveling internationally since 2016. He met Sheena in Croatia. She was from North Carolina. To remain in Canada, he secured a working holiday visa for British Columbia. Together, they pooled their savings, acquired the van, and mapped out a route through Canada before continuing to Alaska. On July 14th, around 3:20 p.m., a mechanic named Curtis and his wife Sandra came upon the couple approximately 20 kilometers from Liard River. According to their account, the vehicle had broken down and Lucas and Sheena appeared unhurried, picnicking alongside the road. Curtis offered assistance. They declined. The next morning, July 15th, truck driver Trevor passed the same location at approximately 7 a.m. The vehicle remained in place. The back doors stood open. One window had been shattered. In a roadside ditch nearby, Trevor found both bodies. Both bore gunshot wounds to the head. Investigators collected 5 shell casings at the location. On July 19th, a body was discovered approximately 200 kilometers south near Dees Lake. Leonard Dick, 64, a botanist from Vancouver, who camped alone in the area while conducting field research, had likewise been shot. Shell casings of the same type were found in the vicinity. A pickup truck nearby had been deliberately set on fire. Registration traced it to Cam McLeod, 19 years old. Cam's girlfriend confirmed he had left for a long-distance drive with Briar Schmigelski, and neither had been in contact with family. Surveillance footage placed both men purchasing a semi-automatic rifle on July 12th. On July 19th, they were recorded driving a gray Toyota RAV4 confirmed as Leonard Dick's vehicle. A search operation spanning more than 11,000 square kilometers was initiated, deploying drones, dogs, military aircraft, and boats.
You know, sometimes I would travel with me and my children to go to doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, to Terrace. You know, that's 6-7 hours. And to do it alone, I'm not doing it alone ever again.
On July 29th, investigators recovered ammunition, a backpack, and Cam's wallet. A sleeping bag was spotted on the Nelson River bank. Leonard Dick's backpack was also recovered. On August 7th, officers undertook a final Nelson River sweep with Billy Birdie at the helm. Birdie observed a raven circling above brush on the bank and stated in his account that the bird's behavior indicated something was likely present. He directed the vessel toward the location. Cam McLeod's body was recovered in the brush on an embankment. Briar Schmigelski was found approximately 2 meters below. Both deaths were attributed to self-inflicted gunshot wounds. 2 rifles were recovered at the scene, along with Leonard Dick's video camera. The camera contained 6 videos in which both men calmly admitted to all 3 killings. The video showed them describing a plan to make for Hudson Bay, commandeer a vessel, and depart overseas. Both also indicated on camera that they anticipated dying within 1 week. Billy Birdie was subsequently recognized for the role he played in finding the bodies. He died on March 8, 2024 at the age of 54. The same recorded statements contained both a detailed overseas escape plan and an explicit expectation of death within 1 week. Those 2 positions were documented simultaneously in the same videos with no contradiction from the speakers. What does the coexistence of both establish about whether the escape plan represented a genuine intention, a performance for the camera, or something the footage alone cannot resolve? Emergency lighting from an adjacent corridor provided the only illumination. The room itself registered no ambient light source. A fixed security camera was positioned to monitor the interior continuously. At a specific point in the recording, a burst of light saturated the entire frame. Once the image stabilized, a male figure occupied the space, upright, moving laterally across the floor. The camera recorded no precursor to his presence. No door displacement, no gradual entry from any edge of the frame. His movement was measured and deliberate. No postural indicators of evasion, concealment, or urgency were present. He moved as though the space was familiar. A security guard observing the live feed recognized the anomaly and proceeded to the room. The door required a key to open. Upon entry, the room was unoccupied. The building's secondary exit remained undisturbed. No alarm had triggered. A review of the camera network identified no coverage gaps or blind spots. The guard conducted a physical sweep, furniture, storage compartments, ceiling access panels. No viable concealment location was found. Viewers who reviewed the footage independently offered 3 competing explanations. The first, a technical malfunction in which a delayed recording feed was superimposed over the live image, producing what appeared to be a person. The second, optical or digital degradation, light refraction, compression artifacts, or data corruption that incidentally generated a human-shaped form. The third came from viewers who rejected both prior explanations, noting that the figure's movement appeared purposeful and spatially coherent, characteristics they described as inconsistent with random digital distortion. Compression artifacts and delayed feed overlays in digital security systems typically produce fragmented, irregular, or static visual anomalies rather than fluid directional movement, a distinction that bears directly on which technical explanation the movement characteristics can support. The figure moved with an even, unhurried gait. No hesitation, no disorientation after appearing. If that movement is consistent with the delayed feed overlay, it requires that the source recording also capture deliberate locomotion under identical conditions. If it is consistent with compression artifacts or light distortion, it requires that random data degradation produced not only a human outline but structured goal-directed movement. Which of the 3 proposed explanations accounts for that specific behavioral quality? Let me know what you think. This footage comes from Gujarat, India. A man was struck by a bull, and the events that followed compounded the situation further. As bystanders moved in around him, one of them threw a rock, apparently aiming at the bull, but it connected with the man instead. The impact knocked him unconscious. Water was also thrown at him in the aftermath. Incidents involving escaped or agitated bulls in public spaces are documented in various regions of India, particularly during festivals or the transit of livestock through populated areas, and bystander responses to such incidents vary wildly in approach and effectiveness. James Blanks, 73, was admitted to Krista's mother Francis Hospital in Tyler, Texas with chest discomfort. Cardiovascular surgery was performed and completed successfully. During recovery, he suffered an unexpected stroke and died. 7 months later, Ronald Clark, 68, underwent a comparable operation at the same facility. The outcome was initially successful before a sudden neurological event occurred. Clark died. Christopher Greenway, 47, came in for a standard coronary bypass procedure. His recovery progressed normally until his nurse left for a lunch break and a code blue was called. CT imaging showed air bubbles traveling through an artery into his brain, the mechanism of a fatal stroke. 3 similar deaths had now occurred within 8 months. Surveillance cameras were installed. The incidents continued. In January 2018, Joseph Keene, 58, was admitted for emergency heart surgery. During a night shift, alarms sounded. An MRI confirmed the presence of massive strokes. Hospital executives reviewed the footage and identified a specific detail. 5 minutes before Keene's alarms activated, a nurse entered briefly, then remained at the nurse's station. That nurse was William George Davis. Footage also captured Davis exiting a supply room while carrying a syringe. Less than 2 minutes later, Keene's event occurred. In an earlier case, cameras captured Davis entering Pamela Henderson's room. She was 63 shortly before she developed unexplained neurological symptoms. Every incident in this sequence occurred at night and during a shift worked by Davis. Once Davis's suspension took effect, the unexplained neurological events ceased. Davis was born February 3, 1984, in Longview, Texas, and worked as a registered nurse at Krista's mother Francis Hospital. When investigators confronted him, he stated he had answered an alarm and flushed a line, attributed to the stated account. Surveillance footage contradicted this. It showed him observing vitals for nearly 3 minutes before acting. Detective Jeff Roberts and Dr. Charles Rum examined medical records and arterial waveform data. Their analysis found evidence of deliberate air introduction into arterial lines, attributed to their findings. Police searched Davis's phone. In a text exchange with a contact named Linda, she wrote, "Try not to kill anybody." Davis responded, "They don't call me the closer for nothing." His computer search history included queries about air embolisms and topics related to serial killers. In September 2021, Davis was found guilty of murdering multiple patients, John Lafferty, Ronald Clark, Christopher Greenway, and Joseph Keene among them. He was sentenced to death. In a post-conviction interview, Davis stated that he stopped taking antidepressant medication in 2017 and subsequently began experiencing a rush during emergency responses. The sensation he described involved control, power, and euphoria, experienced as staff responded to patients he had harmed, attributed to his interview statements. Investigators placed a potential death toll as high as 12 patients between 2016 and 2018. The surveillance record shows Davis observing Keene's vitals at the bedside for nearly 3 minutes before initiating any response. His stated account was that he had done no more than answer an alarm and flush a line. The question the footage places on the record is what that documented 3-minute gap establishes about the plausibility of the defense he provided. The recording was not initiated to document a paranormal event. The subject had configured a camera to capture a household tips video, routine, domestic, unremarkable in purpose. The camera ran continuously. What the footage captured occurred without preparation and without a visible cause for any of it. According to the subject's own account, the disturbances in that house had been accumulating for some time before this recording. Objects displaced from where he had left them, sounds without identifiable sources, nothing captured on camera, nothing with a confirmed mechanical explanation. Only a pattern that had been building, by his account, across multiple prior incidents. He stated that no other person was present in the home during the recording. The first event is visible in the footage. From the kitchen, a paper towel moved, not a gradual slide from a surface, not a fall. The displacement was rapid and directed, the kind of motion that implies force applied in a specific vector rather than passive gravity or air movement. The camera was running at the moment of occurrence. The subject's immediate behavioral response was to redirect his attention toward the kitchen and point toward the area from which the movement originated. Before any explanation for the first event could be established, a second event followed. A sharp audible impact registered. The acoustic profile consisted with a solid object shifting or dropping. Though no source was identified on camera at the time of the sound, the subject paused, scanning the space, attempting to locate the origin. His verbal account, offered in real time, referenced the prior history of disturbances and noted explicitly that this was the first occasion on which such events had occurred while a camera was actively recording. The third event followed. A glass object on a nearby table moved and fell. At that point, the subject repositioned the camera toward the kitchen. The scan of the area revealed multiple drawers in an open position. The subject stated those drawers had been closed prior to the sequence of events. That claim is attributed to his account and is not independently verifiable from the footage alone. What the footage does confirm is the state of the drawers at the time of discovery, open and spatially inconsistent with the condition the subject described at the start of the recording. The confirmation that drawers were open when the subject's attributed account states that they had been closed represents a documented spatial change that persists after the dynamic events and constitutes a distinct category of physical evidence within the same incident, one that differs from the transit displacement and impact events in that it is stable, photographable, and present after all motion had ceased. No figure appeared in the footage at any point during or after the free events. The camera remained active throughout. The subject's behavioral responses, repositioning the camera, scanning the kitchen, verbalizing observations are documented in the footage. No confirmed explanation for the sequence is established by the end of the recording. The concurrent occurrence of multiple types of physical disturbance, displacement, sound, and object movement in the same space within a short interval presents a different analytical challenge than a single isolated event, because each event type has its own documented mechanical causes, and those causes are not all common to a single origin. 3 physical distinct events: the directed displacement of the paper towel, the audible impact of an unidentified source, and the movement and fall of a glass object, occurred in rapid succession within the same space, with no visible agent captured on camera for any of them. Each event type involves a different category of a physical interaction: a lateral force, a percussive contact, a transfer of kinetic energy to a stationary object. Whether a single cause simultaneously produced all 3, or whether 3 separate causes were each independently active within the same interval, carries different implications, and the footage does not resolve which of those 2 structural possibilities applies. Which accounts for the sequence more completely, and what does either answer require to be true about what was present in that space? CCTV footage from Amroha, a city in Uttar Pradesh, India, captured the collapse of a wall under construction. According to what the footage shows, the wall had no adequate support and had been built too high. When it came down, it caught several people nearby in the collapse. All of those involved survived. They were subsequently transported to hospital. Unsupported masonry walls under construction are a documented category of collapse risk, particularly when erected without lateral bracing or when the height to thickness ratio exceeds established structural limits. On the morning of June 16, 2025, an explosion of fireworks factory in Linli County, Hunan Province, China, killed at least 9 people and left dozens more requiring hospital treatment. The incident reportedly began with a small fire during routine loading operations at the site. From there, the fire extended into a storage section where high-powered fireworks were held, triggering a massive detonation. The force of the blast registered across surrounding villages. Windows were blown out, doors were forced from their frames, and debris spread across a broad radius.
快走，是。
给他砸的。
我跟你说，就这走不快的人了。
天哪，我的玻璃都砸坏的，天哪！
哎，你看见，哎，这都是垮吧的。
我都那梦的。哇塞！
玻璃全部掉下来的，砸烂大姐，路上的都砸。真的。
Injured workers and bystanders were transported to area hospitals. Emergency responders were deployed to the area in the aftermath of the blast. The confirmed death toll stood at a minimum of 9. Many of the injuries sustained were described as non-life-threatening. A subsequent review of the facility's safety record disclosed prior citations for safety violations and land use infractions. Reports suggest that inadequate safety protocols and improper handling practices may have been factors in the incident. Fireworks storage facilities are subject to documented regulations governing the separation of active loading areas from stored pyrotechnic materials, with proximity between ignition sources and stored product representing a documented primary risk factor in industrial fireworks incidents. The investigation into the cause of the explosion remained ongoing at the time of the reporting. This footage from China captures a near-miss incident. A man stepped away from where he had been standing in order to feed a cat nearby. Moments later, a plunge pod fell and landed at the exact spot he had just vacated. He was unharmed. Overhead, falling objects in residential or commercial spaces represent a documented injury hazard, with outcomes determined primarily by the mass of the object and the height from which it falls. The incident occurred on January 8, 2025 on a snowy road in Russia. Several young people were in a car towing a Vatrushka, an inflatable snow tube, behind the vehicle. Daria, one of the group, was seated on the tube when the driver increased speed. The tube's motion became increasingly lateral, swinging side to side. The lateral movement carried it into a roadside sign. Daria was on the tube at the moment of contact. She sustained severe head injuries. The driver and Daria's boyfriend chose to drive her to a hospital themselves rather than contact emergency services. She did not survive. At the hospital, the two told medical staff that the injury had occurred during a sledding accident, a false account. They then returned to the original location and used snow to cover the blood visible at the scene, an attempt to conceal evidence of what had taken place. Vatrushka towing behind a moving vehicle is a documented recreational practice in Russia, in which vehicle speed combined with the pendulum motion of the tube generates increasing lateral force that can result in loss of control. Surveillance cameras positioned near the scene had captured the incident on video. The footage was reviewed by investigators who determined what had taken place. Both individuals were subsequently identified and arrested. The camera footage established the facts of the case before any admission was made in court. The driver entered a guilty plea, and that courtroom admission confirmed what the surveillance recording had already documented. On August 3, 2020, a worker at an industrial facility in Samut Prakan, Thailand, was at the controls of an overhead crane moving multiple multi-ton steel rolls along the warehouse floor. The site is part of an active industrial zone on the outskirts of Bangkok. The job involves handling loads with considerable mass. During the operation, one of the steel rolls tipped over. It came down on his legs, trapping him against the floor beneath its full weight. With him pinned down and unable to move, there was an additional hazard. His head was positioned in proximity to other steel rolls still suspended above him by the crane, a separate risk compounding the one already trapping him. He shouted out for help. Workers in the surrounding area heard him and came over without delay. Their first move was to address the suspended load overhead. They operated the crane to clear it. Then, working as a group, they got around the fallen roll, heaved it upward, and pulled the worker free. Steel coils and rolls are among the heaviest and most unstable loads in industrial warehouse environments, with documented tip-over risk when placed on uneven surfaces or moved without adequate lateral support. He reportedly sustained broken legs from the impact. Despite the severity of the situation and the time required to free him, he survived. The response from his co-workers, clearing the overhead load and then working together to lift the roll, was a direct factor in that outcome. On September 8, 2025, a double-decker bus with dozens of passengers aboard was in transit toward Mexico City, Mexico, when it approached a railway crossing and attempted to cross. The crossing reportedly had no barriers in place and no working warning systems. The bus advanced onto the tracks and stopped. Traffic bending the vehicle had backed up, cutting off any option to reverse. The bus remained on the crossing, unable to proceed in either direction. A train approaching the same location at high speed had no means to stop in time. The train hit the bus. On impact, the vehicle was split apart, and debris scattered across a wide area around the crossing. A number of passengers were killed. Many others were taken from the scene with serious injuries. Before the train reached the crossing, the driver had already vacated the area. He was subsequently located and arrested. An investigation was underway, with authorities focused on establishing how the situation had come about and what role the condition of the crossing may have played. Unguarded railway crossings, those with automated barriers, warning lights, or audible signals, represent a documented category of infrastructure risk in which a vehicle obstructing the tracks cannot alert an approaching train in time to prevent a collision. The recording begins in the hours before sunrise on April 12, 2018 at a New South Wales police station car park in Australia. The garage had sat unused for several days. The surveillance camera was operating without interruption. At a specific point in the footage, the garage door began to rise. No vehicle was approaching the entrance. No person appeared in the frame or on the approach to the garage. It lifted partway and then stopped, suspended at approximately the halfway mark, fully neither open nor closed. The second event originated from within the garage. A broom became visible at the threshold, moving forward and crossing into the camera's field of view from the darkened interior. No hand contact was captured at any point in this movement. No figure appeared in the frame behind it. The object crossed from the interior into visible range without a source of applied force appearing anywhere in the footage. The broom did not continue on a forward path. Instead, it elevated slightly and transitioned into a vertical standing position. No contact was recorded at the moment of elevation. The transition from forward displacement to an upright position occurred without any visible supporting contact. While standing upright, the broom made a series of small lateral adjustments. These were minor shifts in placement, neither a sustained fall in progress nor any clear continuation of the initial forward movement. The object held its standing position through these adjustments. Then the broom fell. At that point, a viewer might consider the sequence complete. It was not. While lying flat on the floor, the broom moved again, a final displacement in the horizontal position, carrying the object a short distance across the ground. After that movement, all activity in the frame ceased. The sequence ended without any further displacement. Officers discovered the open garage door that morning. The space had not been accessed in the preceding days by any recorded means. No log of entry to the garage existed for the relevant period. No member of staff provided an account of why the door was in that state. A technician was subsequently brought in to examine the door's operating mechanism. The review did not yield a finding that fully accounted for the door's opening. The door event prompted a proposed explanation from officers and viewers. A mechanical fault in the system had caused the door to open without human input. Garage door automation systems can experience spurious activation from power fluctuations, signal interference from nearby radio frequency devices, or memory faults in the control board, each of which produces a door opening event without human input, but typically produces a complete open cycle rather than a partial stop. The door's halt at the midpoint was not addressed by this explanation, and nothing in it accounted for the broom sequence that followed. A second explanation was put forward by skeptical viewers. The footage had been staged. The distribution history of the footage is relevant context for that theory. The clip was later published online in an edited form. Sound effects were added and a slow zoom was applied to portions of the sequence. These were confirmed modifications applied prior to wider release. The original footage prior to those alterations contained the core sequence: door opening, broom movement, no person visible in the frame. The distinction between a single anomalous event and a multi-stage sequential event is relevant to the staged footage theory. Staging a sequence of object movements requires either a person remaining present throughout, a mechanical apparatus, or a series of cuts, and any of those would typically leave a visual trace in the footage. No such trace was identified in the original recording. The broom's movement comprised 5 distinct stages: forward displacement from the garage interior into frame, elevation to a standing position, small positional adjustments while upright, a fall, and a final displacement while lying flat on the floor. Whether a mechanical fault in the door system, a proposed explanation confined to the door event, accounts for all 5 stages of what the broom did, or whether the staged footage theory accounts for a 5-stage movement sequence with no visible apparatus, no person captured in frame, and no documented cut in the recording, remains a question the footage does not resolve. What the structure of the sequence does is place a requirement in any proposed explanation. It must account not for a single anomalous moment, but for 5 distinct stages of movement distributed across a single, continuous recording. On April 7, 2017, during an evening shift at a warehouse, a small group of workers had clustered at the aisle's far end. They were talking, nothing out of the ordinary, from the other end of the aisle. A forklift was heading toward them. The driver was moving at a measured pace, navigating what was a fairly tight space. At some point in the footage, this is where the available source text has a gap. Something triggers a structural collapse. The precise cause isn't stated in the surviving transcript, and going beyond what the source confirms isn't something this account can do. What the footage does capture is the collapse itself. It happens fast. Everything on the structure comes down at once. Boxes, pallets, materials, and the force of it spreads down the aisle in a chain reaction. Warehouse racking systems are designed with load limits and spacing requirements that, when exceeded or compromised by contact with a moving vehicle, can produce cascading structural failures across connected sections. The collapse was powerful enough to push the forklift sideways. The driver ended up trapped in the resulting debris. The workers who had been standing at the other end of the aisle were in close proximity to where it all came down. As for what happened to the driver after that, the source doesn't provide confirmed information on the outcome. That portion of the available text is incomplete, so no conclusion can be drawn from it. In Vietnam, a man riding a scooter moved onto a set of railway tracks while a train was already approaching. The train made contact with the scooter, a glancing strike rather than a direct collision. The force of that contact sent the scooter airborne, and it came down into a group of people standing nearby. The man who had been on the scooter was not injured. Railway crossing incidents involving motorcycles and scooters are a documented category of collision risk in Southeast Asia, where high traffic density near crossings and limited barrier infrastructure increase the frequency or near crossing attempts. Saving an extra few seconds is not worth risking your lives, by the way, everyone. The driver in the next clip wasn't so lucky though. This happened in Central Florida and shows a deadly railway crash. Take a look. driver hit the post and proceeded to drive anyway, leading to the train plowing into the vehicle and ending the man's life. This video is proof as to why you should always obey traffic laws for your own safety. This CCTV footage was recorded in 2021 on a street in the Jordan district of Hong Kong, and it captures a close call involving a young child. Separating from her mother, a young girl ran out into the street. A car traveling along the road at that moment came very close to striking her, but managed to swerve clear in time. No injuries resulted. Pedestrian near-miss incidents involving young children at unsignalized or unmarked sections of urban streets are a documented road safety category, where unpredictable movement into traffic is a primary contributing factor. In August 2021, surveillance footage from Evin Prison, Tehran, Iran, was leaked and began circulating online. The facility had previously been associated with allegations of housing political prisoners and abuse. The footage opened on control room guards watching surveillance screens. The system then showed signs of disruption. Feeds cut out, screens flickered, and a message appeared announcing a cyber attack. The perpetrators identified themselves as Adalat-e-Ali, meaning justice for Ali, and released the internal footage to media outlets. The material documented overcrowded cells, detainees in confined spaces, and evidence of inadequate basic care. Additional footage captured physical abuse, guards striking prisoners and dragging them along the floor. Human rights organizations reviewed the footage and found it constituted credible evidence of neglect and mistreatment. The release of internal surveillance footage from a detention facility by an outside party represents a documented category of information operation in which the breach of the security system is simultaneous with the disclosure of the facility's internal record, meaning the footage's authenticity is supported by the confirmed method of its acquisition. The breach was acknowledged by officials, who also condemned the leak. Officials separately stated they would investigate the incidents shown in the footage. Officials responded to the leak itself before addressing what the footage documented, condemning the disclosure while separately committing to investigate the conditions and treatment it recorded. Which of those two responses represents the more direct engagement with what the footage shows? Security camera footage from Louis Morangan, an Indonesian street on the route between Semarang and Demak, captured this incident. The container truck lost control and hit a concrete median. The impact generated enough force to lift the cab off the ground. At the time, the road had no other motorists on it. Concrete median barriers are designed to redirect errant vehicles and prevent crossover collisions, but direct high-speed impact with a median can transfer sufficient force to destabilize or overturn heavy vehicles. In Brazil's Belo Horizonte, 5 minutes after taking off from the airport on May 4, 2026, a small plane crashed into a residential structure. The pilot reportedly called an emergency because he was having trouble sustaining altitude. 2 people were injured and 3 people perished as a result of the accident, all of whom were aircraft occupants.
que me voy a ir. En el nombre de Dios. Vamos,
On May 7, 2026, a shopping center in Los Mochis, Mexico caught fire, and less than a minute after the fire alarm went off, the building was completely engulfed in smoke, making evacuation exceedingly challenging and leading to at least 6 fatalities and several injuries. The cause of the fire is still being looked into as of right now. A car flipped and rolled toward a young woman in the Costa Rican city of Cañas, taking her by surprise. She fled and sought refuge in a nearby workshop when she saw the car approaching, escaping unscathed. The 3 people inside the car reportedly sustained minor injuries. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant, friends.